Here we'll have a series of YouTube videos to take you through how to do the payroll project. The first thing that we're going to take a look at is getting out all of our resources, having everything ready to look at. And so you should have your book in front of you, and Chapter 7, the first page of Chapter 7, is the start of the payroll project that you're going to be looking at. And so page 7-1 is the start of Chapter 7. Now, this payroll project assumes that you are going to do this manually. And in the back of the book, there's various sheets for payroll registers, etc., that you can pull out and do to do this manual project. Now, in our class, I have you do payroll registers already yourself manually on exams and things like that. So I do not feel that we need to spend 40 hours doing a project manually when most payroll in the United States is done online or on software. And so we will be doing our project on software. The problem with that is that since the book assumes that you're doing the project manually, it does have a software section, but it kind of assumes that you have already done the project manually and you're doing it a second time with the software to just get a feel for software. So we have to flip back and forth between different pages. You are going to need to turn in your book to the Appendix A-1 in the back of your book. And this page is the start of where software instructions are. Now, since they're not expecting you to do the entire project from start to finish with the software, all they show you in this software section is the actual paycheck days. So everything that's not a paycheck day, you have to flip back to Chapter 7. Then there's also occasional forms that will need to be filled out as we go through things, and those are in Chapter 7 as well, and it would behoove you to also get that ready to go. And so you should have a tab in Chapter 7, wherever it is you are, as far as the payroll project. You should have a tab in Appendix A, wherever it is you are. And then you need to find toward the back of Chapter 7 a third section and put a tab on it. If you find the page in Chapter 7 that says Employees Earnings Record, and then go all the way to the last earnings record, and then the next page will look like this. It has federal deposit information worksheets on it. Starts out with transaction number 11. And so you're going to want to stick a tab on this page so that you can easily flip back to it as well. So as you go through the project, you're going to be constantly flipping between some earlier page in Chapter 7, wherever you are, plus this later section of Chapter 7 where the forms are, and the appendix, wherever you are in the appendix as you go through. So it behooves you to have some way to quickly get back and forth of those three sections. This is the first page of talking about, in Chapter 7, talking about the project and about the company and about the employees and about how they do their payroll, etc., and which records that you have. It would behoove you to at least skim through the reading of these first handful of pages that explain all of this general information stuff. And they also give you some information that you are going to need later to put on various forms. Basically, what they're telling you here is that they have done the first 3 quarters of the payroll year. So, of course, that it would be January 1st through September 30th. That has already been done. The payroll, any payroll forms that needed to be done, all done. So you are starting on October 1st, and you're going to do the last quarter of the year, which of course is the quarter that not only requires quarterly forms to be done at the end of it, but is also going to require W-2s. On this next page in Chapter 7, it shows you the personnel data, this figure 7.2 at the bottom of the page. It shows you all the employees and their address and all of this. Now this is already plugged, most of this is already plugged into the software, so you don't need most of it. But there is a section on here that says group insurance for each employee and how much it is. Now we learned in class that this is group term life insurance, and we learned that if the company pays the premiums for life insurance for an employee, where the employee gets more than $50,000, then whatever part of the premiums that the company had to pay for the insurance that's above the $55,000, then that amount of the premium is taxable to the employee as a taxable fringe benefit and has to be added onto their W-2. In this case, the employees are paying for their own group term life insurance, and they pay 3 cents for every $1,000. So Anthony Victor Bono, the first employee listed, has group insurance of $55,000. And so you would take 55 and multiply it times 3 cents, and that's $1.65. And so Anthony would have to pay $1.65 for toward his insurance. All right, if you, once you get through the first handful of pages, it just does some general introduction to the company and the employees and how they do things and what forms you're going to have to take care of and all of that sort of thing. You'll get to the start, the actual start of the payroll project, the first payroll that you actually have to put in. And this is for October 9th. Okay, and so I need to have that page, and every time you come to a page that has a payroll, and so if you read this, it says number 1, that's transaction number 1. The first payroll in October covered the 2 work weeks. These people get paid every 2 weeks. Okay, so this covered the 2 work weeks that ended on September 26th and October 3rd. Okay, and so then it goes through a bunch of information about who gets what and how they calculate it and all of this stuff. But whenever you get to a section where it talks about the payroll, doing a payroll, you're instantly going to turn instead to that same payroll page, but in the appendix. So here I am on appendix -2, A-2, and where it says October 9th payroll. And now you're going to follow all the steps that it tells you to do for the payroll. And they have the information about who gets what listed here. In part 2 of this video, we'll actually go through and learn how to put this onto the payroll software. But here we're just talking about being able to flip back and forth. Okay, and so here you're going to go through all of these steps all the way through the end, which I don't have here. And once you get to the end of the payroll in the appendix, you're going to flip back to the end of the payroll back in Chapter 7. And so the end of the payroll back in Chapter 7 ended on page 7-10. And so I go now to the next thing, which is October 15th. And the company is on monthly employer deposit schedule for the feds and for the IRS. And so October 15th would be the day that they would have to pay September what was due for the 941 deposit, which is the FICA and the FIT that was collected from employees during September, plus the FICA that was the employer had to pay for September. Now here they're telling us in this paragraph that they have already done that for us because they don't want us to have to worry about anything that had to do with September. And so they say we don't need to worry about that. They already pretended like they already took care of that before we started. The next thing down is October 20th, and it says number 2. So we're going to be looking for that number 2 when we go forward. And it says, on this date, Globe Bright Paint Company must deposit the Pennsylvania state income taxes withheld from the October 9th payroll. So we are on a bi-weekly pay period, and the state says that we have to deposit it within so many days. And here they tell us it must be remitted within the 3 banking days after the close of the semi-monthly periods, ending on the 15th and the last day of the month. So within 3 banking days after the 15th, and we have to pay whatever we owed from the first half of October. Now, the first half of October, we only had 1 payroll. That was the October 9th payroll. And 3 banking days after the 15th is October 20th. And so here we're going to have to deposit whatever state income taxes that we withheld from the employees. The employer, of course, does not have to ever match any income taxes. Okay? Here it tells us that Pennsylvania has eliminated the filing of the paper forms, and they have a telefile or online filing. But the book is giving us a little paper form that we're going to put all the information on, and then we can use that to call in. Of course, in reality, we're not calling in. This is a project. So now here's where you skip forward to the forms section, and you will see on this first page of the forms there's nothing that says transaction number 2. And so we go to the next page. Oh, here's transaction number 2. State filing information worksheet. That's us. Okay? And we have to fill out all of these forms. And they give us all this information. The quarter ending date, of course, is the quarter that we're in. We're in the 4th quarter. And what is the ending date? Well, that would be December 31st is the last day of this quarter. Payment frequency, that's how often do we pay payroll. gross compensation, they're talking about the October 9th payroll. What was our gross wages? And you will get that off your payroll register once you've completed the October 9th payroll. The Pennsylvania withholding tax, how much state income tax did we withhold on October 9th? That's also off your payroll register from that day. You're never going to have credits or interest. Credits is if we had an overpayment from previously and now we're going to get that back. Interest is if we are paying late, then we have to pay interest. So we will never have credits or interest. You can put zeros and zeros there. And then payment, so the actual amount that we're going to pay should be the same as where it says Pennsylvania withholding tax. However much we withheld from the employees on October 9th, that is also what is our payment. And so we would fill that out there. Now that we have that filled out, we would go back to page 7-11, and we now have transaction number 2 for October 20th done. So we go to the next thing. October 23rd, it says prepare the payroll op. Immediately when we see prepare the payroll, what do? We go to the appendix, and you would look for the October 23rd payroll, and you would do that, put that payroll in, and then you would come back to the end of October 23rd and see what's next. When you get toward the end of the project, you're going to see this page here. It says optional activities. That means optional for those people who had already done the project manually, which is not you. So it is not optional for you. You must do these activities. Okay, and one hint I will give you is that be sure that you need to close out the year before you put in January stuff. Okay, so you will need to close out the end of the year, and you need to get all of your end of the year numbers and forms done before you close out the end of the year. Then you close out before you go into January's journal entries. Here you will find a page that says Payroll Project short version. What this is they thought, well, the people who had already done the whole project as a manual project, maybe they just want a little bit of a feel for the software, and so they made this shorter version of the project to do on software. Well, that is not you, so you can just ignore that whole section. All right, this is the end of part 1 to show you how to flip back and forth and how to get through the project. In the next step, we will take a look at actually how to input a payroll into the software.